When it comes to Formula One journalists, our guest this morning is absolutely the best of the best. Second time here on the show, we welcome Maurice Hamilton joining us from the UK. Hey, Maurice, how are you?
I'm fine, Bobby, and lovely to see you again. Thank you very much for having this chat.
And it's so great to see you. So excited to get a chance to talk to you about your latest book, which is on the set with me, and of course, a tremendous Formula One season. I wanted to quickly highlight your amazing career, over 40 years covering this amazing sport, award-winning journalist and author of over 30 books. And one of the things I wanted to chat with you this morning about is some of those great stories that you've told about your dad. I mean, he seems to be the one that really got you into Formula One and racing, and even kind of sharing those stories with some of your fans about him sneaking into the pits at Mercedes and asking for autographs, saying that it was for you when it really was for him. I mean, those are some amazing stories about your dad.
He was just mad about cars. So he was born in 1919. And he was the son of a grocer. And across the road from the grocery shop in the provincial town where he grew up, there was a garage that was actually an agent for Riley cars, which were then made, the British car made in those days. So he was always across the road in the garage looking at the cars and tinkering with them and so on. And motorsport was something that was just, for him in those days in Northern Ireland, it was something way far-fetched. It was outside their remit, with one exception. And that was that they had a classic race called the Tourist Trophy Race. And it had been going from donkey's years before that. And it was held on a circuit in Northern Ireland called the Ard Circuit, which is a road circuit, which connected three major areas, the south of Belfast to Newtownards to Cumber, this triangular road circuit. And it was about probably half an hour from where my dad lived. And of course, when that came to town, that Mercedes were there and everybody was there, Nuvolari, Caracciolo, all the big names would come over to Northern Ireland. Can you imagine? This was a very big deal for him as a little boy. And he was in what they call the Scouts, which is a youth organization. And they used the Scouts to be messengers at the racetrack. So in other words, there was no radio communication between the marshal's post because the road circuit was, I think it was about 14, 15 miles long, so very long. And they needed to communicate, the marshals needed to communicate with each other. And they used Boy Scouts to take messages, handwritten messages from one marshal's post to another. And that's what my dad did. So he was involved in the race, carrying these messages. And one of the teams in the TT for a couple of years was Riley. And they were garaged in the garage, they were looked after in the garage across the road from where he lived. So he saw these racing cars across the road. So he got absolutely besotted with the whole thing. And then when the Tourist Trophy then moved to a Dundrod circuit, which is an 8-mile road circuit north of Belfast, which is a fabulous circuit. And that's where I saw my first motor race with him when I was age 7. And that's when all the stories started about how he was pushing me forward to get an autograph, saying it's for the boy, but it was for him. And how he somehow got himself into the Mercedes pit. How, we don't know, but he did. And he's a picture of Moss making a pit stop, and there was Sterling Moss making a pit stop. And the photograph was taken from across the track. So there's the side view of the Mercedes 300 SLR, the Mercedes pit. And there's my dad in the background peering, you can see his face peering in. And to this day, well, until he died, we still didn't know how he did it. But he said, I don't know how I did it, but he got in anyway. So you can imagine, I mean, with all of that going on in his mind and then transferring it to me, it was quite natural that I was going to, age 7, seeing a classic motor race at Dundrod with Jaguar there, Aston Martin, Mercedes-Benz. They were all there, all the top drivers, Fangio, everybody was there. To see that at an early age, there's only one place that I was going to go, wasn't it? And that was to be involved in motor racing. What else are you going to do?
And you could definitely tell your dad's influence in your life and kind of foreshadowing for your career, because you were able to speak your way into Formula One. And I think it's interesting, too, that a trip to Monaco in 1973 really is what changed your life forever.
Yes. I went there with my father. He took me. We went to the British Grand Prix a couple of times in 1959, 1962. And then I'd been with my friends to the British Grand Prix in 66, but my dad and I went to Monaco in 73. And we were sitting in the spectator stand, and I'm watching this thinking, my God, I love this sport. but I'm just at that time, 1973. What was I? I was a salesman. I was selling houses, I think, or plastic pipe or something boring. And I'm thinking, I'm seeing these guys who are journalists with armbands on, walking about on the track. I'm thinking, I'd love to do that. How do I do that? And I'm talking to my dad about this, and I'm saying, he said, well, can you write? And I said, I don't think I can write. He said, well, why don't you try something? I said, well, I don't know what to try. There's no point in me writing a report because those journalists that we can see are going to write the report. Got to do something different. So I decided to write a story about what it's like to be up on the grandstand as a spectator. So to tell readers who hadn't been to Monaco what it's like to go there, what you see, and what's the atmosphere like, and is it worth it, and where to stay, and all the rest of it. And I made notes all weekend, put it all together, and formed it into sort of story, and got it published. And that was the start.
And I love those stories, Maurice. Really great stuff. And you end up becoming a full-time journalist, Formula One, in 1977. And as we just mentioned before, Murray Walker, incredible, a tribute to a Formula One legend, your very new book that is out. Murray, of course, for the fans at home that know him or do not know him, he recently passed away March of 2021. He was a friend and colleague of yours. Was it difficult to put this book together?
It was probably, in one sense, the easiest book I've ever done of the 40 plus books, simply because it was an absolute pleasure. And because the 40 plus people that I spoke to all wanted to contribute, all wanted to say, oh, yes, yes, please. I've got a story to tell you. Yes, please. And it was, sometimes when you do a book, the character that you're doing the book about, there may be a dark side to them that, you have to touch on to make the book complete. And it's going to be tricky. And you talk to people and they don't want to talk about it, or they go, well, he was all right, but, and there's the but that they don't want to talk about it, or they do, and it's a bit tricky. But with Murray, nobody had a bad word to say about him. Nobody. So it was just a joy to do. The hard side of it was the publishers wanted to get it out now before Christmas, naturally. It meant it had to be turned around pretty quickly because, as you said, Bobby, he died in March, towards the end of March, and I had to have it written by the end of June. And that was a lot of work, but thoroughly enjoyable. I mean, it was a pleasure.
So Murray is, to me, the voice of Formula One. When is the first time that you meet him?
Would you believe it was actually on, it might have been that trip we talked about, 1973 Monaco, on the flight. It was a package tour by a company called Page and Moy, and Murray was on it. And he happened, on the flight back, he happened to be sitting beside me and my dad. And we got talking to him. But, he couldn't remember that, and I wouldn't expect him to. But I did, and my dad did. The first time I spoke to him professionally, I can't really tell you, Bobby, I don't know. All I do know is that he treated me like everybody else. I was a newcomer, and why would he bother with me? But he would come up and say, hello, I'm Murray Walker. I hear you're Maurice Hamilton. How do you do? Welcome. And just, all enveloping, generous in spirit, kind, anything I can do to help, let me know. And lots of people have told me the same story when they first met him. And so I can't tell you when it was, but it would have been in 77, 78 at a Grand Prix somewhere. But yeah, he was just utterly welcoming, and he would see you and say, how are you getting on? How's it going? And he read everything, of course. So he would know what you were doing. And he would say, oh, I saw you're writing for so-and-so now. That's very good. Or you're writing for this newspaper. Or how's that going? Will you be okay? Yeah. So no specific dates, but the overall picture is of just, as I discovered, having spoken to so many people, a very kind, generous man who would see in you what he had himself, which was enthusiasm. If you were enthusiastic and loved it like he did, you're in. That was fine by him.
That was part one of our interview with legendary journalist and author Maurice Hamilton on his newest book about the late, great Murray Walker. Tune in Monday for part two.